My mother abandoned me, took all my savings, then suddenly called asking me to pay $2,000 for her husband's stepdaughter's dorm room. My phone suddenly buzzed when I was in bed, minding my own business. It was my mother. I hadn't heard from her in months. So what did she have to say? She didn't say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Instead, she got right to the point. She needed $2,000 for my stepsister's dorm fees. Yes, you read it correctly. She didn't even check in, just made an abrupt demand for money. Before you pass judgment, please allow me to explain why this is such a significant event. This isn't a typical family request. When I was 16, my mother married David, her new husband, and it was brutally obvious that he had no interest in me. David had 2 children of his own, Ethan, 14, and Chloe, now 17. They were treated like gold from the time they entered the picture. Almost immediately, my mother began acting as if I did not exist. I understand that mixing families can be difficult, but she didn't even attempt to make it work. When I graduated from high school, my grandparents graciously gave me $22,000 to help with my future. It was the first time I had truly felt free. On top of that, I had saved another $2,000 from my part-time work, giving me a $24,000 cushion for college or whatever came next. Then one day, I looked into my bank account. Every single cent was gone. I confronted my mother, convinced that it must have been an error. She was still a co-owner of my account because I hadn't transferred it over yet. She looked me straight in the eyes, without a sign of guilt, and said she had taken everything. Her reason? It was my punishment for not respecting her new husband and their children, or at the very least, some ambiguous crap she cooked up on the moment. I lost it. She had treated my future as if it were nothing. That money was for college, my life, and she just took it. So, I did the only sensible thing. I packed my bags and moved in with my grandparents, the only people who seemed to be concerned about what I was going through. After that, I seldom spoke with my mother. Years later, she crawled back. Move forward a few years. I just graduated college and am still trying to figure out my life. My mother called unexpectedly. Why? To ask for $2,000 to help Chloe pay for her private dorm room. It appears that living with a roommate would be too difficult for her. Seriously? What 17-year-old wants a private dorm room? What happened to just coping with your roommate like everyone else? I did not even hesitate. No way. Not happening. And how did she respond? No is not something you can say. We are family. Are you really going to refuse to help? She seldom asked how I was doing. We hadn't spoken in months, yet she treated me like I was some kind of ATM, just useful for money. She went straight to the monetary request, as if I owed her something. I simply hung up. I wasn't going to suffer through another guilt trip. To be honest, the entitlement shocks, but does not surprise me. This is not the first time she has done anything like this. After David entered the picture, she went above and beyond for him and his children, whilst I was there growing up. She wasn't always this way, but the moment she married him, it was as if I did not exist. She stopped asking how I was doing, stopped attending my school events, and stopped loving. She neglected to invite me over for Christmas after I had already moved in with my grandparents. However, guess what? She faxed a card. "I hope you are doing well. Love, Mom," is what it said. Nothing like, "We miss you," or "Sorry for everything." Just a simple card. Her interest was looks rather than true motherhood. Now, she has the audacity to call out of nowhere and ask me to finance the dorm fees for her stepdaughter after everything she's put me through? Not likely. To be honest, it's quite depressing. I owe them nothing after she stole my savings, left me to fend for myself, and prioritized her new family. I once wanted to be in a relationship with her. I tried to contact her back then, hoping we might work things out. Still, every time, it felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Her new family occupied her so much that she had no time for me. Despite our years of silence, she suddenly expects me to hand up $2,000 as if we're close. It's annoying, but I suppose I shouldn't be shocked. Some folks don't change. They simply take and take, claiming ownership over whatever you have. But I have learned my lesson. I'm no longer that defenseless child, letting her walk all over me. I've moved on, started my own life, and I'm not going to let her guilt trip me into paying for anything. Following that call, I blocked her from everything. And to be honest, it feels as if a huge weight has been lifted. I cannot live with such negativity in my life. She will find out quickly if she tries to contact me again. I am done being courteous. After hanging up with my mother, I understood that was it. I had made myself very plain. Wrong. A few days later, I was just lying around trying to enjoy my weekend when my phone rang. It was her once again. I almost disregarded it. What positive outcome could this have? But something piqued my interest, perhaps the faint hope that she had returned ready for a normal chat. She hadn't. With a note of smugness, she remarked, "Listen, I talked to David, and we came up with a new arrangement." I could almost see her patting herself on the back as if she were about to provide me with excellent service. She went on, "Chloe definitely needs a private dorm room, since sharing with others would make her uncomfortable. She apparently can only deal with shared toilets and roommates. Their great scheme? Chloe would receive a lovely 2-bedroom apartment with her own bathroom. And who would they like to help fund the cost? Exactly me. What is the total for the semester? $3,800. They said I should donate $1,000 per month for a stepsister who hardly remembers me. They asked me to pay $1,000 a month for a room I would never visit. It was so ridiculous I almost laughed. I asked her directly, "Why is this my problem?" She immediately went into full guilt trip mode. "You never gave anything to this family. It's time you give back. You have to correct your errors." Whose mistakes? I haven't even handled them in this manner. Then Mom yelled at me for living off my grandparents, as if I were a freeloader. First and foremost, my grandparents invited me to stay with them after everything I'd been through with her. They wanted to help me get back on my feet. Meanwhile, she has done far more for her real family than she has for me. In her perspective, I owe her for every little thing she has done for me. She kept underlining how much I owed them for not being a part of the family anymore, as if her driving me out was entirely my fault. She made me feel like I didn't belong, and now she's making me feel awful about leaving that mess behind. Yes, but no thanks. My rage was seething at this moment. But rather than allowing her to drag me down into this pit of guilt and manipulation, I asked her one thing. "When are you planning to pay me back the $24,000 you took from me in high school?" She flipped out the second I said it. She began screaming, calling me unappreciative and self-serving. "I did everything for you, and this is how you pay me back?" Looking at the past and throwing it away. "You never even recognized what I did for you." I replied plainly, "You never even apologized for stealing that money. You are the one who owes anything here." But she wasn't listening. She kept yelling about how I had abandoned the family and how my inaction was jeopardizing Chloe's future. Apparently, enrolling her at a public college with normal dorms would ruin her entire life. Sure, she will be completely fine. The truth is that she wasn't asking for aid. She demanded it. There was no "please" or "could you help us out." It was simply an expectation that I would comply, as if it were my obligation to clean up after their actions. And let's not even get started on Chloe acting as if she's too good for the standard college experience. I made it through college while sharing a tiny room with a stranger. I'd had enough. "I'm not giving you a single penny. You can figure it out without me." Then I hung up once again. It felt like déjà vu, not because of the money, but because of the overwhelming entitlement, a complete disregard for me, my life, and the limits I had established. My hands were shaking. I knew it was not over. Even as I hung up, I could see she wasn't going to let this go. My mother has always been the sort to persist until she gets her way. Later that evening, she confirmed I was correct. She sent me a long, guilt-ridden text, practically an essay, about how I was tearing the family apart and how, now that I'm generating money, I needed to step up, as if I were some kind of prodigal child returning, expected to pay my dues. She kept insisting that I pay for my sins and start contributing to the family. Honestly, that was ridiculous, but I didn't fall for it. Her capacity to manipulate reality and make me appear like the villain was nearly astounding. Years of dealing with her manipulative behavior had prepared me for this. I wasn't about to let her shame me into paying for something that had nothing to do with me. So I blocked her. Everything: telephone, social media, and email. She attempted to contact me in every manner possible. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't want to wake up every day wondering when the next guilt trip was coming. Blocking her seemed like the only way to have some peace. It wasn't simple, however. I would like to say that blocking her felt like a clean break, as if I didn't care, but a part of me does. Part of me still wishes things had gone differently, that Mom would one day truly consider me as her child rather than a walking financial account. I doubt it. I realize that's unlikely. She made her choice. I made mine. I still can't believe how brazen she is. After everything she has put me through, she expects me to pay for her stepdaughter's expensive dorm room? After practically removing me from her life to focus on her real family? I will not allow her to bring me back into the circumstance. Right now, I'm living my own life and looking forward, not backward. I'm over the drama, the guilt trips, and acting as their financial safety net when money is tight. That is their problem. It is their responsibility if they cannot afford to pay their own costs. That is where I stand. I don't know if she will try to contact me again, but if she does, she'll immediately realize that I'm no longer playing along. I have more important things to think about than paying for someone else's pampered child to live in a fancy dorm. After blocking my mother, I thought that was it. My decision was made obvious, and the continual strain from her calls and texts had vanished. Naturally, nothing is ever that simple for her. A few days later, just as I was feeling ready to move on, my phone lit up with a message from my Aunt Karen. Karen is the only member of Mom's family who has consistently been rational, so I believed she was only checking in. Nope. Her message read, "Hey, your mother has been calling me nonstop. She says you blocked her, and she's really upset. She wants to talk to you. I think you should hear her out." I about rolled my eyeballs out of my head. Hear her out. In actuality, my mother merely wanted money. But Karen has always been the sort to preserve the peace, so I wasn't surprised when she tried to mediate. What surprised me was how my mother had dragged her into this mess. I responded, "She's not offended, Karen. She's furious because I refused to give Chloe money for her dorm." Karen tried to reason with me. "Maybe you should talk to her and set some boundaries." I told her unequivocally, the boundary is already set. I could tell she was uncomfortable being caught in the middle, so I tried not to vent my aggravation on her. "I'm not paying for anything, and I'm done with the guilt trips." She exhaled. "Just consider it, okay?" I assured her that I would think about it, but honestly, there was nothing else to ponder. I was not about to give my mother the satisfaction of believing she could embarrass me into doing anything. I wasn't going to succumb. A few days later, I was walking home from work when I noticed her, my mother, standing outside my apartment building like a stalker. I had no idea how she discovered where I lived. Perhaps she hunted me down in another manner. Perhaps she received the address from Karen. Either way, she was present. She appeared irritated, as if she'd come to start a brawl. I paused in my tracks. What do you say when your mother shows up unexpectedly after you blocked her? I did not have time to sort it out. "We need to talk," she began, approaching me before I could pull out my keys. I exhaled. I was already fatigued by this confrontation before it began. I nearly laughed in her face. "Fine," I said, "but if this is about money, you're not getting a dime." She crossed her arms, obviously irritated by my tone. "I didn't raise you to be so disrespectful." Respect? From the lady who took my money, put her new family ahead of me, and only called when she needed something? Is that what she's talking about? I informed her calmly. "I owe you nothing, and I definitely don't owe Chloe a private dorm room." Her expression contorted with rage, as if she couldn't believe I was standing up to her. "Chloe deserves this," she snapped. That is when I lost my temper. "You think I should help because I'm doing well now? Are you serious?" I was snickering. "You took my college savings when I needed it. You didn't care about my future then, and now I'm supposed to care about hers." She tried to cut me off, but I continued. "You hardly even invite me to family gatherings these days. You replaced me, and now you think I'm going to swoop in and save the day when things get tough? Absolutely not. Remember this. I am not a member of your new family." She just stood there silently for a while. I believed I had finally reached her, that she would realize how ludicrous it all was. But no. Instead of responding, she said, "You've always been selfish. I tried to offer you a better life, and all you've done is throw it back in my face." Selfish? After everything she had done, she had the arrogance to label me selfish. I was not going to let her alter history. I was not going to let her paint herself as a victim. "You gave me nothing," I stated forcefully. "You borrowed from me. You took my time, my money, my peace. You chose them over me, and now you're living with the consequences. Deal with it." She moved closer, attempting to scare me, but I did not back down. Her voice was chilly. "You owe this family." I replied, "She is your stepdaughter, not mine." That was it. I owe them nothing. At that point, I realized that our relationship was beyond repair. It wasn't only about money. It was all about control. The idea that I had constructed a life apart from her, that I was no longer under her control, and that I no longer required her approval upset her. She was searching for anything to get me back in. When I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm. Before she could say anything else, I ripped my arm free, looked her in the eye, and whispered, "Goodbye." Then I stepped into my building, leaving her standing out in the cold. She should not expect to be welcomed back. As soon as I went inside, a surge of emotions hit me: relief, resentment, and grief. It felt like I'd finally let go of something that had been weighing on me for years. Nonetheless, my mother remained with me, the woman who raised me, even if she didn't do it perfectly. Despite knowing I had done the right thing, I felt guilty, not because I had walked away, but because I hadn't acted sooner. The truth was that I had not left my family. They'd left me behind. Later that evening, Karen texted me. "What happened?" I gave her the short version. She responded, stating she hoped we might work things out someday, even though she understood and disagreed with Mom's actions. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. I was done. That some huge reconciliation down the line was not going to occur. Instead, I simply said, "Thanks," and that was all. For the first time, I acknowledged that there was nothing left to fix. For the first time in my life, I had fully prioritized myself. It was not easy, but that was the correct decision. I believed it had finally ended, that my fight with my mother outside of my flat had resolved things, that I had made it obvious I had no intention of giving in and would not pay for anything. At the time, I assumed we had just had our final major blowout. Wrong. Things are never easy when you have a mother like mine. Approximately a week later, I received a call from an unknown number. Normally, I ignore them, but for some reason, I chose to respond this time. When I heard the voice on the other end, I recognized it as David, my stepfather. I hadn't heard from him in years, so I assumed he was trying to settle things. He was equally enraged as my mother. He did not waste time greeting people or making small talk. Instead, he launched right into accusations. "So, I heard you've been disrespecting your mother." I felt my jaw tightening. My instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the best of me. I wanted to see how far they would go with this. I kept my voice even and said, "I'm not disrespecting her. I'm simply not giving her money." He gave a sarcastic laugh. I could almost hear him roll his eyes. "You think this is about money? This is about family. Here we go again. You abandoned your family, and now you're neglecting Chloe when she needs you." I could feel my patience slipping, but I kept my voice calm. "Look, I didn't abandon anyone. You pushed me out years ago, and Chloe is not my responsibility." There was a pause. For a brief moment, I hoped he'd finally understand. Of course, he didn't. "You're selfish," he said, his voice full of hate. "We've done everything for you, and how do you repay us? By turning your back on Chloe and your mother." I almost laughed aloud. Everything. When their lovely little family was complete, they rejected me. They stole from me, neglected me, and treated me as an afterthought. I'd had enough. "You did nothing for me," I responded, my voice crisp and firm. "You took from me. Once you had your new family, you both acted like I didn't exist. My mother stole my money, and now, suddenly, I'm the one who's supposed to make things right." Before I could finish, he cut me off. "You're not a kid anymore. It's time to stop acting like one. Family is about sacrifice. You owe this family." That word, "oh," set me off. I owe them nothing. With my patience fraying, I shot out, "No, David. I don't owe you a damn thing." I could hear his fury increasing, but I didn't mind. They owed something. They treated me as if I were disposable for years. I was done playing nice. I was no longer that youngster who could be walked over. I was not going to sit there and let him or my mother guilt trip me into accepting responsibility for their problems. "This isn't over," he added, his voice low and almost threatening, as if he hoped to terrify me into changing my decision. I did not even bother responding. "We're family," he added, "and we'll always be family, whether you like it or not." I hung up, and as soon as I did, I felt a sense of relief flood over me. It felt as if I'd finally closed the door on something toxic. I had drawn a line. There was no going back. Now, however, that was not the end of it. A few days later, I received an SMS from Chloe. She was now getting involved too. Though her message was less harsh than David's or my mother's, there was still a lot of guilt tripping. She wrote, "Hey, I know things have been tight, but I really need help with this dorm situation." I looked at the message and shook my head. "Not sure why you're acting so tough about it. It's just money, and it's not like you can't afford it." It's only money. The entitlement was ridiculous. She believed I owed her something. as if I were some wealthy aunt who could afford to grant her every dream. For a time, I pondered responding, but honestly, what was the point? They had never listened before. She was not going to listen now. They were all in their own little world, and I was the villain simply because I did not satisfy their standards. So, I deleted the message. I also blocked her. They were never going to view things my way, no matter what I did. They saw family as a one-way street. They took, they never gave, and when I refused to give, I suddenly became the terrible person. However, they were no longer my family, not truly. Family should be based on mutual respect, love, and support. They had none of that for me. To them, I was just a tool, someone to manipulate with guilt until I gave them what they desired. And yes, it hurt, but I was not going to let the pain control me anymore. Once, I would have done anything to get their acceptance. I just wanted to feel like I belonged. But that time has passed. I was no longer a desperate child. I'd created my own life. I did not need their approval. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about what family really meant. It's easy to get caught up in the concept that family means everything, that blood is thicker than water. However, sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who harm you the most. And when that happens, you have to make a decision. Do you continue to let them damage you simply because they are family? Or will you walk away, even if it means severing ties with those who should love you unconditionally? I decided to walk away. And yeah, it was difficult, but that was the correct decision. I refused to allow them to pull me down any longer. That night, as I laid in bed, I experienced something I had not felt in a long time: peace. For once, I wasn't awaiting the next phone call, the upcoming guilt trip, the next request for money. For the first time in years, I felt liberated. And to be honest, it felt fantastic. A few weeks passed without any further problems. I was working, going out with friends, and just living my life. For the first time in a long time, everything seemed normal. Then one day after work, I discovered a note in my mailbox. There was no return address, just my name on the front. At first, I considered tossing it, but something about it felt odd, so I opened it. And guess who it came from? My mother. But this wasn't a card. This was not an apology, not even an ordinary letter. This was a legal notice. She actually attempted to take me to court. Over what, you ask? Familial responsibilities. Apparently, Mom had concluded that I was financially liable for Chloe's college fees because we are family, and she was attempting to present it as some type of legal responsibility, as if I was obligated by law to pay for Chloe's dorm. I stood there and read it, and then I laughed out loud. As I stood in my living room holding this absurd letter, it seemed like a joke. It was so outrageous, so absurd. But this was not a joke. She had indeed consulted a lawyer. She had them prepare a full document claiming that I owed her money. The letter was full of legal language about how family must assist family and how I was morally required to step in, given my so-called success. Success? I was 23, fresh out of college, still sorting out my life, and barely able to pay my rent. She talked about me as if I was sitting on stacks of money, as if I had limitless resources and was being terrible by refusing to share them. But even if I were wealthy, if I had all the money in the world, that doesn't mean I owed them anything, especially not after how they treated me. I immediately phoned my grandparents. They were as startled as I was. Grandfather was upset. "Don't you worry about anything," he said. "We'll take care of this." They contacted a lawyer buddy who informed us there was no legal basis for what my mother was attempting. Courts don't enforce family guilt trips. After a few legal processes, the issue was settled. When my mother realized she had no case, she simply dropped the whole affair. Since then, I have not heard from her, not from David, not from Chloe. And honestly, it seems like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. For years, I allowed them to control my life via guilt and manipulation, but now, for the first time, I'm completely free. Looking back, I am glad I stood my ground. Yes, it was hard. It was difficult for me to leave my own family, but that was the correct thing to do. Family is meant to be about love and support, not about utilizing each other whenever it is convenient. I'm not sure what the future holds, but one thing is certain: I will never allow them back into my life, not after all they've done. Do I wish that things had turned out differently? Of course. But at the end of the day, you must maintain your peace, and sometimes that entails walking away, even from those who are meant to love you most. And that's fine. On my own terms, I'm moving forward.